The year is 1954. The Geneva Accords are being signed in response to the Korean War and the First Indochina War. Diplomats from China, the US, the USSR, South and North Korea, France, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and the UK would negotiate the terms of the armistice in Korea and the temporary division of Vietnam to be reunited 2 years later. Senator McCarthy turns his sights on the US military in his hunt for communists, and the Senate, in a 67-22 vote, ends his witch hunt with a formal censure. The U.S. Supreme Court rules against Brown v. Board of Education, ending racial segregation in public schools, calling Plessy v. Ferguson a violation of the 14th Amendment. The average price of a new car is $1,700. The average yearly income is $4,100. The Dow Jones recovers to pre-Wall Street crash highs of 381.17 points. And a man by the name of Donald Fry would go on to open his first grocery store, Fry's Food and Drug, in Contra Costa County, California. In 1960, with the help of his brother, Charles Fry, they would expand into the Phoenix, Arizona market. And in 1972, the burgeoning grocery chain would be sold by the brothers to Dillon's, a Kansas-based grocery chain, for $14 million, with each brother taking half. The newly acquired chain was still under the management of the Frys, and Charles would raise his three sons, John, Randolph, who went by Randy, and David, working at Fry's. The year is 1985. The Live Aid concerts are held in London, Philadelphia, Sydney, and Moscow throughout July, raising over $50 million for famine relief in Ethiopia. These concerts would attract over 200,000 attendants, and with satellite link-ups, an estimated 1 billion people would watch the live event in 110 different countries across the world. Live Aid would be host to B.B. King, Bob Dylan, Cher, David Bowie, Duran Duran, Elton John, Hall & Oates, Lionel Richie, Madonna, Paul McCartney, Queen, Run DMC, and U2. Mikhail Gorbachev would replace Konstantin Chernenko as Soviet premier after his predecessor's death. He'd be a key figure in the transformation of the USSR, ushering in new domestic and foreign policy in attempts to salvage the quickly crumbling communist regime. Perhaps one of the most important moves, he and Reagan signed into law mutual nuclear disarmament deals, some of the first and greatest steps towards the end of the Cold War. One of the U.S.'s oldest highways, Route 66, was officially removed from the U.S. highway system and replaced by the interstate system. Nintendo releases the NES in October, launching with Duck Hunt, Ice Climber, and Super Mario Bros., just in time for the holiday season. Michael Jordan was named the NBA's Rookie of the Year in May after his exceptional inaugural season with the Chicago Bulls in '84.
On behalf of Miller Brewing Association, I'm very happy to receive the award, although, Keem and other rookies in the league just the same won the award as I have. I think my year was very, very experimental for me. I'm very happy that I achieved so much, and hopefully next year will be more promising. If not, then maybe I'll retire after 2 years. Thanks a lot, very much.
Calvin and Hobbes would debut in November, beginning its 10-year run under artist and writer Bill Watterson. Coca-Cola would announce and release New Coke in April, which would be declared by most observers to be the worst marketing blunder in history.
The best soft drink, Coca-Cola, is now going to be even better. Simply stated, we have a new formula for Coke.
I mean, are you 100% certain that this won't bomb, this new formula?
I think, as I said, I think this is the surest move ever, because the consumer made it. We didn't.
Fans of the brand would protest the decision, and within 3 months, Coca-Cola would reverse their decision, removing New Coke altogether.
The introduction of Coca-Cola Classic ran on the Dow Jones wire at 3:18 p.m. yesterday.
I'm Don Keogh, president of the Coca-Cola Company. When we brought you the new taste of Coke, we knew that millions would prefer it, and millions do. And we knew that it would beat the taste of our major competitor, and it does. What we didn't know was how many thousands of you would phone and write asking us to bring back the classic taste of original Coca-Cola. Well, we read and we listened, and you know the rest.
And three brothers, John, Randy, and David, alongside former girlfriend Catherine Calder, would open Fry's Electronics on May 17th in Sunnyvale, California. Located off of Lakeside Drive, the original Fry's Electronics was built around the idea of bringing the grocery store retail model to the computer and electronic supplies market. The original store was a dichotomy of both a full grocery store, even including fresh produce, and a high-end computer electronics store stocking things like integrated circuits, test and measurement equipment, technical books, and computer hardware and software. Fry's was actually one of the first and few retailers to stock off-the-shelf microprocessors like the Intel 80286. At first, the store was almost half groceries, but the owners would find it far more manageable to reduce the groceries to soft drinks and snack foods. The store would originally bill itself as the one-stop shop for the Silicon Valley professional, as one could buy both computer chips and potato chips at the same time. This was the place to be if you wanted to build a desktop PC entirely a la carte. Over the next few years, as business grew, the original Sunnyvale store would close down its Lakeside Drive location to be relocated across Lawrence Expressway off of Kern. The building was designed to look like a massive dip integrated circuit, and the door handles were shaped like the enter and escape keys on the keyboard. The company would expand to a peak of 34 stores by 2014, operating locations in 9 different states, 17 in California, 8 in Texas, 2 in Arizona and Georgia, 1 each in Illinois, Indiana, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. Fry's would hire ex-Lucasfilm creatives to design their buildings, and most of those stores would have their own individual themes attached to them. I remember growing up and exploring what felt like miles and miles of aisles of electronics throughout their Egyptian and Mayan-themed stores in Campbell and San Jose respectively. In Burbank, Fry's had a 50s sci-fi theme building with the UFO crashing through the front of the store. City of Industry, California, yeah, that's a real city name, had an industrial revolution and steampunk theme to represent the area's major industrial parks and the eastern part of LA County. Sacramento had the gold rush, San Diego had an aircraft carrier, Houston had oil derricks, and Webster had the International Space Station. By all means, these places were not only extremely individual in their market, but stood out in design and creativity with their stores.
In the light of the 21st century, get ready for the future. Power up with guaranteed low prices in every department at Fry's Electronics.
In 2007, Fry's would open their final Sunnyvale location, hosting a theme based on regional history. The former location would go on to be a sports basement, which, oddly enough, would keep the door handles. And so, with an explosion in reach and a firm grasp on their market, where did it all go wrong? Why, today, 36 years later, couldn't they keep their doors open? If we go to the Fry's website, all we're going to see now is a notice discussing its closure and citing complications due to COVID-19. While I do not doubt it was the final nail in the coffin for Fry's as it was for too many businesses, I hesitate to conveniently place all of the misfortune of the company on the back of a global mismanagement. I believe the problems with the company began not just last year, not just 5 years ago, not even only a decade ago, but all the way back to its founding. I believe that 36 years ago, off of Lakeside Drive in Sunnyvale, California, the brothers Fry set themselves up for failure. I believe that the only way for this company not to have fallen would have been to change these problems they baked into their formula or catch them early enough and reverse course. Let's start at the beginning.
Feature mini DV camcorder, only $997. Remember, your best buys are always at Fry's. Guaranteed.
John Fry, oldest of the Fry brothers, worked as the computer systems manager at Fry's Food and Drug when his father ran the chain, and even after the buyout when the Frys were still managing them. John, and to a similar extent his brothers, never really liked the grocery store scene. When running Fry's Electronics, they made several deliberate decisions that would put them at a disadvantage as competition grew. First, they specifically marketed themselves like the tech enthusiast grocery store, even initially opening as one. I think they should have probably taken a closer look at what would make or break a grocery store, specifically as it relates to customers. What do I mean? Well, a few different things actually. First, they focused on quantity of goods over the quality of service, and that was no more prevalent than in their customer service. If there was one thing that was universally disliked by the Fry's crowd, it was the customer service at virtually every single one of their stores. You'd have employees who seemed rather incompetent when it came to answering any questions about their products that were deeper than surface level. You have an abysmal returns policy, incentivizing your employees to butt heads with the customers by giving them bonuses if they could persuade the customer to accept in-store credit over a refund. In 1997, Forbes would report on the unorthodox practices, alleging that there was an internal policy called the Double H, or hoops and hurdles, in an attempt to delay or prevent customers from receiving a refund. USA Today and Wired would jump on the story in '98, reporting many customers' dismays with the business. Seems like a pretty crappy business practice in my opinion. You also had practically no real delivery or setup service if you bought a product that needed more than one person to set up, like a TV or home theater equipment, and you just wanted a white glove service because it was more convenient. Another point is their terrible history with shady business practices and cutting corners. For instance, in 2003, Denzel Washington, Bruce Willis, and Arnold Schwarzenegger each sued Fry's Electronics for $10 million apiece for publishing their pictures in print ads and flyers without their permission. On Black Friday in 2007, customers in Washington were offered to cut to the front of the line for a service fee. And only after the media got on the story did Fry's offer to refund the fee, but I'm betting they attempted to get the people to exchange it for in-store credit of less than equal value. Anyway, in 2008, the FCC found that Fry's cut corners, failing to attach analog-only tuner labels to analog TVs and fining them $384,000. The same year, Fry's VP of Merchandise, Yusuf Umar Siddiqui, also known as Omar Siddiqui, was federally charged with an illegal kickback scheme involving Fry's vendors and the use of mail-in rebates, with the scheme being designed to defraud Fry's to cover his gambling habit, a habit which had lost him over $160 million in Las Vegas. In 2012, once again at the Washington location, Fry's paid $2.3 million and agreed to implement preventative measures to settle a sexual harassment lawsuit brought forth by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in relation to allegations that an assistant manager had repeatedly harassed a then 20-year-old sales associate with repeated sexually charged text messages and invites to his house to drink. She brought this forth to her direct supervisor, and the supervisor reported to the corporate, whose response was to fire the sales associate and then fire the supervisor for standing up for her. All right. On a separate note, they had terrible luck with their online sales and many domain blunders. In 1997, a man by the name of David Peter Berlini, who manufactured French fry vending machines, which I had literally no idea existed until I was writing this script, and now I'm really hungry for some French fries. He owned the domain fries.com. He even attended Santa Clara University in California at the same time as the brothers Fry. In the end, Fry's won the lawsuit later that same year, alleging trademark infringement in a default judgment, meaning that there was no response from Berlini, so the courts had no real option but to side with Fry's in their ruling. From that point on, they have fiercely defended their domains and trademarks with legal recourse. In 2001, they had purchased the e-commerce group Siberian Outpost, and in November of 2001, they used Outpost.com as the URL to begin their online sales. The problem is that no one understood that Outpost was the online sales platform for Fry's, and that Fry's.com was, at the time, the low-cost internet access address. It wasn't until 2006 that Fry's relaunched Fry's.com as the online store, with Outpost.com now redirecting itself to the Fry's website. Also in 2001, they threatened to file a lawsuit against Garrett Mackey, owner of Fry'sAd.com, who used the site to post Fry's print ads online for anyone to download, print out, and redeem in store. In 2007, they actually lost a dispute with Profit Partners Incorporated, an online ad company, over Fry's.us, with the arbitrator ruling that Fry's Electronics had no more of a right to use the Fry's mark than any other company with a similar surname or commercial use had.
Permission to treat the witness as hostile. Granted.
So yes, there were all of these problems, but most of these were either locally based or they had been internal disputes with other companies. So what could have shown the rest of the customer base what would be the downfall of the company?
Remember, your best buys are always at Fry's. Guaranteed.
Well, in 2019, Fry's had moved their business to a consignment model, stating that the reason for the near empty shelves in virtually all locations over several departments were due to shifting the business model and a change in suppliers. This, however, would not stop the spreading of rumors that had gone on for several years at this point over the coming demise of the company. But if I had to attribute the biggest problems with the company regarding continued customers, I would have to put it on the backs of customer service and customer focus. Here's what I mean. In places like Silicon Valley, where you had several Fry's locations within miles of each other, the company was looking to be, as they stated, the one-stop shop for the Silicon Valley professional, where, as always, the best buys are always at Fry's, which in essence means your marketing has to be designed for specifically a small subset of people who are vastly knowledgeable about the technology at their disposal and who are always heading towards the bleeding edge of the market in terms of not just what they buy, but how they buy it. In that sense, how difficult must it have been to employ sales associates and customer service agents who were as knowledgeable as these Silicon Valley professionals without being professionals themselves? Anyone with this level of detailed knowledge, even today, could find plenty of other ways and places to spend that time and earn a paycheck. In expanding outside of California, you're furthering yourself from the ability to assume that most people you're servicing are going to be as knowledgeable about these things. Not because of who your customers were as people, but because of what their focus would have been on. In that way, customer service would become far more important to the day-to-day operations of any individual store. Finally, here you see a company that was late to the game in establishing an online presence and was fueling the very market that would be the first people to transition towards buying most, if not everything, online. You might assume that if there's anyone who would care about how easy and consistent the online shopping experience is, it's the Silicon Valley professional who's at the bleeding edge of interaction between technology, society, and the marketplace, who you are also attempting to market yourself towards. When talking about Fry's, it's nearly impossible to avoid talking about its successors, namely Best Buy and Micro Center, even if they're only successors by association. If you look at Best Buy, what you have is national reach, consistent customer service standards, a specialized workforce designed to handle your tech questions, installations, and repairs, and an online presence to rival Amazon and Newegg for their tech sales. And when you look at Micro Center, you have an entire store dedicated to the intricate and specific needs of computer hardware and tech enthusiasts. As you're seeing in a lot of my footage, you've got literally every single thing that someone would need if they wanted to build or just outright buy a computer, except for graphics cards, but that's another issue altogether, and that's more so on the current market in the economy today. And one of the simplest yet smoothest online presences out there. If we look at the last year, we see that while Fry's was breathing its last dying breaths, Best Buy saw some of its highest sales ever recorded, and Micro Center could barely keep their physical locations stocked long enough for someone to actually see the product. That's how quickly they were going out of stock. And getting some of the footage you've seen here, I had to travel to Nebraska Furniture Mart, and whenever I enter the building, I'm reminded of my childhood, which is very odd because before a few months ago, no one in my family even knew what a Nebraska Furniture Mart was. We're not from this area. We're from back in California originally. I realized this is the long-lost sibling of Fry's Electronics, except rather than a technological focus, you have a home goods focus. Here's what I mean. You have absolutely everything you could need to furnish, finish, and decorate the interior of any house or home, from types of patterns of carpet to hard surface materials to paints and paintings. From home security to home entertainment, from workouts to working from home, they had literally all of it. So I thought to myself, how have they succeeded where Fry's failed? And the answer is simple. They are a perfect example of what customer service should be. You have department sales reps who are required to know their stuff about the specific department they're working, a simple, friendly, and efficient checkout experience, and you drive your car up to the loading bay around the back of the building, you queue up in line based off of the items you're picking up, and they send people out from the warehouse to get your paperwork, load the items into or onto the back of your vehicles, and they even tie it down themselves with their own supplies. That way, they're the ones responsible for securing the items safely to your vehicle, and there's no problems for lawsuit purposes. The only complaint I have about the place is that I have to drive 2 hours to get to it, but even then, they're only minutes away from gas stations, dining, and conveniences. They even have their own restaurant inside the store. While I'm writing the script, I'm now on the 9th page, mind you. I'm reminded of the good times I had as a kid going to Fry's. One of my best friends, Nolan, and I would go to Fry's with our families, and we always enjoyed the experience we had in these stores. Now, we were certainly too young to understand the problems with customer service or the general incompetence of a lot of the employees when you asked them any technical questions, but the stores themselves were almost like theme parks, and I could get lost for hours looking through all the intricate details of the interiors and interacting with the displays for all the different product lines. I remember a time when Fry's was flawed but functional. I remember a time when a kid who hated grocery shopping or going to clothes stores would relish the opportunity to go to Fry's, if nothing more than for the experience itself. For me, I remember when the escalator at the Egyptian-themed store in Campbell used to work. I'd love the slow ascent towards the imposing figure of the shape of the entrance. I felt like I was in an Indiana Jones film and was instantly transported to another reality where I was exploring the world and finding all these new things. One day, the escalator stopped working, and for years after, I kept looking whenever we went to see if the escalator would be working. But trip after trip, year after year, it would stay in disrepair, until one day I just stopped looking. I think that's when I first knew it was coming to a close, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. I think that's when I started to understand what problems my dad had with the place and why we started going less and less often. Last year, around this time, California, for a very small sliver of time, didn't require a mask everywhere you went, and I had gone with one of my best friends, Noah, to go and pick up a motherboard for his new PC that we were building together. When we went in, I only saw emptiness across the entire store. There were shelves upon shelves that were either barren wastes of what used to hold the newest in computing technology, or they were cluttered with heaps of cheap Chinese imports that blatantly ripped off well-known reputable brands. It was disheartening and a little depressing. I saw a part of my childhood slipping away, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. And so few people actually walking into the store that one of the few things they had any actual products for besides what I previously mentioned was the adult videos section. I didn't even know it was an adult videos section until I was walking through the aisle and realized what I had just seen. There was no marking, no one standing guard to check if people were coming into the section and if they were actually adults, no rope to section it off from the rest of the store, nothing, absolutely nothing at all. It was the last nail in the coffin for me. That's when I knew it was on its deathbed and it wouldn't recover, that it couldn't recover. On February 24th, 2021, after 35 years of business, 34 store locations, and a history most people never knew, Fry's Electronics shut down, and in the hours just before sunrise, the web page would be updated one last time. A Dear John to all its customers spanning 3 generations and millions of lives. Charles Fry, father of the brothers Fry, passed away at the age of 92 in January of last year. He had passed away peacefully, sleeping next to his loving wife of 68 years in their home in Paradise Valley, Arizona. Loved by all his family, Randy called his dad the go-to guy for everything, stating he loved to stay in the game, which he did until the end. The sun had set on Fry's Electronics, and it's not likely to rise again. But let this be a lesson to businesses of all kinds. Never forget the importance of the customer and their needs, or you're not likely to have them for long. Understand the shifting market and strive to keep up with it, or risk falling by the wayside. Build your business around moral and ethical standards, not tolerating misdeeds or sweeping problems under the rug. They always come back around and are always larger than they left. Set yourself apart in terms of quality, and the quantity will come to you in time. Until then, persevere. So I'm filming this after I recorded all of the audio for this week's video, because the card, my video card, my graphics card, burnt out on me. Luckily, I have another one that's a more powerful card. I was saving it for when I built out my new system, which I haven't had the time to do yet. But turns out I'm gonna have to use it beforehand. And the point is that I have to go pick up a very specific computer part. And I just happened to need it to finish a video on Fry's, an entire store dedicated to very specific computer components. So I have to think about it like that. I have to think about it in the frame of mind that this is lived-in experience for why stores like Fry's are important.